Sebastian, so you, one of a rare reporters who followed the story, you've been to the some of the court procedures. I would explain that this guy is sitting in a small town in the western Ukraine. So, what is an update of on the case? What we should know what is the latest?
Well, I mean, the latest is that he was sentenced on 21st of May, so exactly 2 years after his arrest, to 6 years in jail. So as it was explained in Igor Buldiga's documentary, he already served 2 years, and the first year in jail counts as double, according to the Savchenko law, so he only has 3 years to serve. And his lawyer is planning to appeal the case. So this is really like the last thing we know about the case.
To what extent the case is significant?
Well, it is significant in the sense that apparently this French guy has been set up by his Ukrainian partners and apparently, allegedly, by the SBU. And the SBU and its chief, Vasyl Hrytsak, have used the Moutaux arrests to promote their action and their fight against international terrorism. But we have seen in the course of the investigation that this is not really the case. And even the French investigators didn't really take the Ukrainian claims seriously. So in that sense, it's significant.
So indeed, what are the French side, the French law enforcement doing, saying? Because we also need to remind that 2 years ago when everything had happened, the Ukrainian Security Service was extremely proud. They were speaking about the stopping the terrorist attack before the football championship as like a major success. So what out of that is, I mean, we just watched the story, but what out of that is true or not?
Well, it's the way the French investigators, prosecutor answered me and Igor Buldiga when we went to France was that we do take this case seriously, but it has nothing to do with terrorism, and we couldn't find any implication of this guy Gregoire Moutaux with French nationalist and radical organizations. And this is something that the Ukrainians have been claiming. So the way that the procedures, the course procedures were conducted, they showed that there were quite many mistakes and quite many infringements to the procedures. And the way that it was done actually makes me want to believe more the French side. In the sense that this guy doesn't have any connection to radical organizations, and this guy was not planning any kind of serious terrorist attacks. What remains serious is the weapon smuggling. And it seems to me that given the current circumstances Ukraine has been living in for the past 4 years, someone like Gregoire Moutaux was interested in buying weapons in Ukraine and maybe to sell them in Western Europe. So in that sense, using Ukraine as some kind of a supermarket for weapons. As you know, there are more and more illegal weapons here in Ukraine, although the cases of smuggling across the border are not really proven.
So exactly the case, because like when there is a war, there would be always media writing that the country has become the market for the guns, for international smuggling. But while reporting the war, and you're working in the east of Ukraine, you're covering, beside that story, the conflict. To what extent this is just one case? I'm speaking about in particular international smuggling. So what should we know? Because it was the case when we finally found out somebody who tried to smuggle it, and in the end, 2 years after, it had happened, but it's not the mass scale of smuggling.
Yeah, and I mean, and plus, as you know, like the weapons that we actually found in his car on the on the day of the arrest, some of them were fake. So the guy actually purchased some weapons that were fake. So I mean, but this is really like connected to the story that is very complicated. What we know is that it is very interesting for some players, be it organized groups or individuals in Western Europe, so in this case in France, to purchase weapons in conflict zones. So like the biggest supermarket for the past 30 years has been the Balkans, and this is no question about that. And Ukraine is also very interesting. But the thing is that it is not really connected to any political cause. most often this is connected only to business and to the prospect of making easy money. So to which extent Ukraine is now on the map of these international smugglers who try to smuggle, like 2 weapons, like 5 rifles, 3 RPGs at a time and make a profit out of it, like this is still very, very hard to tell.
Also, one of the name which was in the report, the name of the battalion Azov, a far-right battalion, which is also connected somehow sometimes to radicalism. So while working on this story, what do we know about this connection of the French far-right, Ukrainian far-right, and in particular maybe Gregoire Moutaux and the people from the Azov battalion he was talking to?
Well, Ukrainian far-right have these organizations, and namely Azov, they have connections to Western nationalist radical organizations. But in this case, it doesn't seem like it's accurate to talk about any connection between Azov and French radical organizations with Moutaux as a go-between. Because apparently he was really acting as a single player. The fact that Azov, the name of Azov is involved in this story is connected to the personality of Mikhail Zubov. So as we know, this guy, this man, we cannot ask him any more questions because he died back in 2016. And there are many questions that are left unanswered. But the thing is that Mikhail Zubov used to belong to Azov, but at some point he most likely decided to shift and work for the SBU. So the implication of Azov here is very much of an anecdote. Like I wouldn't really consider it as something serious when it comes to dealing with the case.
The Ukrainian Security Service is not often answering the difficult questions from the Ukrainian journalists, but you're working for the international publication. Did you manage to get some answers?
No, not more than Igor Buldiga. And we traveled together. We worked together on many aspects of the story, but I didn't get any.
To what extent do you think they are, the French law enforcement agents are capable to work more on that and clarify if there is some kind of a distrust to the Ukrainian side? And what the French side is doing?
The case is dropped. It's buried. French investigators are not really interested in that anymore. And there is a very simple explanation for that. They couldn't find any connection to radical organizations. They couldn't prove that there was preparation for terrorist attacks, plotting. And most importantly is that Gregoire Moutaux himself doesn't want to cooperate. He doesn't want to ask to be repatriated to France. French investigators traveled to Ukraine back in 2016 and they met with him. Doesn't want to say anything. He doesn't want to talk with journalists. He hardly cooperates with his lawyers. He dismissed his lawyers 5 times. So this is a guy who really is not going to say anything, and he's not going to try to defend himself. And in that sense, French investigators, they had to drop the case.
So if there are no facts, no more facts than we had in the movie, what you can say maybe about his personality then? Because maybe then we are searching for some answers.
Well, when it comes to his personality, I'm also, compelled to what I know and what I've seen, which is not much. Him sitting in the courthouse doesn't tell me much about his personality. But we traveled with Igor Buldiga to France and to his hometown. And what we have learned from some of his acquaintances and local residents is that he was very, very dedicated to his work. He's in love with cows. He's very dedicated to cows, and he was interested in setting up his own farm. He was needing money. He had some previous problems with justice when it comes to brakonstvo, when it comes to illegally hunting animals in the forest, but nothing really serious. And he doesn't have any kind of connection. No one in his village suspected any connection to far-right organizations.
And obviously you're into this case because you're writing for French publication, but to what extent you had a couple of these kind of cases of foreigners of other nationalities? Here in Ukraine?
No, this is really the one case. this is really the one case.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Seb. So we looked at, and I think that therefore there is not enough maybe information on in some cases. We already explained everything. It's definitely the case to follow. And I'll be back in a second.